Thank you very much, Chairman, and thanks everybody for coming out to listen to us on this very crucial issue. The English writer G.K. Chesterton once stated that when you see a collapsing civilization and the emergence of totalitarianism, there is always something about it of the hatred of childhood. That is something that our present sexually obsessed culture, which cannot bear to be in the presence of childhood innocence and will always seek to destroy that innocence. All children have a period of time called the latency, when they are not aware of human sexuality. They are entitled to have that time. They are entitled to enjoy that time in freedom without interference from adults whose motivation is at best misguided and at worst very suspect and very sinister. In my opinion, the present drive by the government to prematurely sexualize children, to introduce them to the concepts of radical sexual activity, to clearly separate them from the natural purpose of human sexuality, can only end in one place, and that is the acceptance of greater and more extreme forms of sexual perversion, including sexuality with children and even including pedophilia. We cannot let that happen to our kids. I have no idea whether the members of the government who promote drag queen story time and sexually pornographic school books have paedophile tendencies or paedophile sympathies, but I have no doubt that what they are doing will inevitably end up in a greater societal acceptance of paedophilia. Do not for a moment believe that this is a far-fetched idea as it seems. Who would have thought even 2 years ago that government ministers would be in tears demanding the right of transvestites to parade their wares in front of children in public libraries? And it must be asked whether this is in any way different from grooming children for sexual precociousness with adults. It seems very difficult to understand why this is such an important matter for all of the parties within the present government, and why persistently adults and concerned parents are being excluded. Who would have thought that our system of education would involve children being exposed to highly pornographic material, which even RTE would not permit to be broadcast on the airwaves, in case its listeners would be embarrassed. And I can tell you, if RTE find it offensive, that is saying something. The promotion of paedophilia is perhaps the last taboo of any degenerating society. Given what we have accepted over the past 5 to 10 years, we can have no doubt that this is next up on the agenda of the sexual left. I would appeal to people, if you cannot come out to protect and fight to protect your own interests, if you stood by while they attacked your freedom of movement, if you stood by while they attacked your bank accounts, while they persistently lied to you over the airwaves about crisis after crisis, which are entirely fictional, if these do not steer you into rebellion, then at least come out and fight for your children. Because if these evil tyrants, if these monsters get their clutches into your children, they will destroy them and make their lives a misery and a living hell. We cannot let them do that to our children. I'm not particularly interested in what sexually perverse people get up to among themselves, though I would advise them to have a care, because sexual corruption is a very destructive force. But I would tell them, keep your hands off our children. For the sexual left, and increasingly that has come to mean all of our political parties, the mere acceptance of perversion is never enough. Acceptance quickly moves to celebration. Celebration quickly moves to participation. Participation soon becomes mandatory, and that is what I believe they have in mind for our kids. Those who do not participate will come to be seen as outcasts, as outliers. There is no depth of sexual perversion to which the sexual left will not plumb. There is no level of disgusting activity which they will not force upon society, and the demand that it be fully accepted as part of the normal human condition, which it is not. If you doubt what I say, look to the past. History has shown within many of the classical pagan cultures that sexual perversion was celebrated and worshipped in a very similar manner to what is happening in Ireland today. Do not be under any illusion as to what will come our way if we do not stop it. Our government has been fully captured by activists who have a grim and terrible future lined up for us and for our kids. Why do you think that the Minister for Children in this country is almost always a practicing homosexual?
Send them home!
What do you think are the chances of that in the normal course of events? Why is it that this government, for some reason or other, believes that homosexual persons are more appropriate persons to understand and look after the interests of our children than heterosexuals, than couples, or God forbid, than fathers? Does that not seem a little bit counterintuitive? Not only are Roderick O'Gorman and Catherine Zappone practicing homosexuals, but they are radical homosexual activists. They come from a tradition that has a contempt for heteronormativity and which is intent on pushing a radical sexual agenda on the children who have been committed to their tender mercies. Why do you think we have a Minister for Children as opposed to a Minister to protect the family? And why is the government intent on intervening in family matters? The recent programmes under sexual and personal health education in our schools have been introduced with the intent of familiarising very young children with the concepts of pornography and extreme sexual behaviour. This can only result in sexual confusion among children and in confusion about their sexual identities. School is no place for the state to intervene in the early lives of our children with a view to corrupting them.
Well said! Speak up!
This is perhaps the most serious crime that the present government is engaged in. Schools are places for education. They are not places for sexual propaganda. Patrice has mentioned the recent reports in regard to TUSLA and the fact that so many children within their care have been subjected to grooming and sexual attacks. In addition, TUSLA guidelines for their operatives now advocate invasive questioning of young children in regard to what they see as their sexual identity. This is a very difficult thing for young children to engage in, and this process is highly inappropriate. The recently released film, Sound of Freedom, has highlighted the extent to which child trafficking for sexual purposes is taking place on a worldwide basis. I have heard reports of obvious incidents of child trafficking going through Dublin Airport, which is not capable of dealing with these issues, and whereby people without papers are waved through without proper examination, frequently with children in their custody. Is that perhaps the reason why the government are so intent on not having proper immigration policy whereby proposed migrants can be properly vetted? We must protect our children from this horrible industry of sexual trafficking, and we must call those responsible for it to account. Finally, I would say that the overt attack against childhood and against children may well be the straw that finally breaks the camel's back when it comes to awakening of the anger of the Irish people. When the anger of the mammies of Ireland is finally awoken, I would not like to be in the shoes of our mainstream politicians, I can tell you that. We must not allow them to get away with it. And I will appeal to you to support the Irish Freedom Party in our efforts to bring this to a halt. Any society which will not protect its children will face a terrible and a grim reckoning. We cannot and we will not let that happen. Thank you very much.
Tracy to speak, just saying.